What's up, guys? Welcome to TV Pilot Reviews. Today we're going to answer the question, should you watch the CBS premiere of God Friended Me starring Brandon Michael Hall? So let's get to it.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
I had to give a DMX shout out, just because I love DMX.
I mean, it's DMX.
It's also very contextually relevant to the show.
To the show, for
which
real.
I don't think we always accomplish.
I mean, this is it right here.
What's up,
Lord,
guys? Welcome
give
to
me a sign.
Lord, give me a sign. What's up, guys? Welcome to TV Pilot Reviews. It's a little slim here, but I mean, come on. We got the cream of the crop of the crew today. It's me, it's Linda. We're reviewing God Friended Me on CBS, and again, this is TV Pilot Reviews. But before we get into what we usually do, first of all, I'm DeAnJilo, so welcome and thank you guys for joining us. And we have
Hey
the
guys,
beautiful
Linda Antwi here.
Yes.
Hi guys.
So today we're going to be reviewing the CBS premiere of God Friended Me, which actually got some pretty good reviews. And about 43 minutes of a show starring Brandon Michael Hall, who famously for us had another big time show called The Mayor that we were not a fan of.
Right.
But this is his second attempt at a big network pilot show.
Yeah.
I think overall probably a little better, just conceptually, not as offensive. But we're going to get into a little bit of our thoughts on the show. But once again, guys, this is a TV pilot review. So what we do here is we look specifically at the pilot and answer the question for you guys on whether or not this show is worth checking out. So we're going to get to that. But before we get to that, we're going to play the trailer for you guys to give you a feel of what the show is about.
Say that God has a plan for all of us. Well, I never believed that to be true.
Our dad is a reverend. Miles is an atheist. What is it going to take to bring the two of you back together?
I thought I had it all figured out, but then something happened, and it changed my life forever. I got a friend request from God. And it turned my life upside down. Who's John Dove? Hey! John Dove! Somebody something good! I think you just saved my life. I don't know who's behind this, or why they chose me. We owe it to ourselves to open our minds to a new way of seeing the world. It's not going to be easy. Change never is. We just need to have the courage to take the first step.
God Friended Me. New Sundays this fall on CBS.
Oh,
I gotta tell you that
cute?
the sizzle there, or it like makes me want to watch it.
Does
Do you
it?
know what
I
I
mean, I think we've said that about the trailers are on point, even if the show is horrible.
I know, but it was really like, this one made me like, oh,
It touched you.
you know what? Yes, it did.
So I'm gonna throw this out there. There was a scene in there that actually got me emotional.
Which one?
We'll get to it because
Okay.
that'll be a bit of a spoiler. But I think this is kind of relevant to bring out to the show. I'm actually a pretty spiritual, religious guy, so this show was. I'm actually more critical of shows that touch on things that are important to me.
Yes,
such
I
as
agree.
racially related things and
Faith.
faith related things. So I'm coming through that lens. But overall, Linda, what was your feel of the show? How did you feel about it?
Well, we're coming from a very similar lens. Faith plays a huge part in my life as well. So that's the filter, everybody. But overall, I think this show I like the topic that it's tackling in this day and age and where we are. And I like that it's a feel-good show. So
Yeah.
overall, I'm in.
What's your pass or play?
Okay, so for me, I'm going to be a tentative play because I
Okay.
don't know if I have, like I was telling you, an extra hour in my week to add this, but I'm definitely a play for the audience.
Okay. And again, we'll get a little bit more into the plot of it, but for me, I'm not gonna lie, the first couple minutes I was just like, oh, this is gonna be horrible.
Yeah.
But it got a lot better. It's a very feel-good story. So I don't actually think I'm going to, because there's so many good shows on. I don't know if I'm going to recheck in, but it was a good show.
Yeah.
I'm probably a personal pass, but a play for other people.
See?
So
We're similar.
I know, which is bad. We're always agreeing. But so the plot for the show, for you guys, if you didn't pick up on the trailer, Brandon Michael Hall, who plays Miles Finer, plays an atheist who grew up in a religious family, but he's very, very gun-ho about denying that God exists. He has a podcast about it, but his father is a preacher. And basically, from the show, God friends him on Facebook, and through a series of circumstances, he's challenged on his beliefs, which I
Yes.
think is a good summary, right?
Yeah, it's a great summary.
Yeah. So that's kind of the lens that they're kind of coming from, which is interesting. It's like, wow, you're talking about religion on a big network show. They're tackling a lot of interesting topics. It's a feel good. It's very much feel good. I don't know if I wouldn't even call it a comedy at all.
No, I don't think I was really laughing. I just think it's a feel good drama.
Yeah, and so, but we here on the TV Pilot Review Show, if there's a show that we hated the most, it was The Mayor.
See, I wasn't here yet.
You weren't yet.
But I always hear about The Mayor.
And I appreciate, we got Jeff on the mic. He's our engineer today, and he gave the drop, and that is him also saying that he hated that show as well.
Yeah.
If that wasn't clear. So you weren't here. I know you wouldn't have liked the show, but that's good. Since it's your first exposure to Brandon Michael Hall, how did you feel about his performance?
I think he's a solid actor. I have seen him here and there, so I'm a little bit familiar with who he is. And I thought that I almost feel like he's gotten better.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like he's grown into his acting and he's matured, and it comes across in this pilot.
100% agreed. He, based on, even in The Mayor, you can tell he's a charismatic guy, personable. It's obviously he's building great relationships because he got another opportunity on a big network show. It's just not easy to do. And I'm glad that I got to see him in a role that I could actually appreciate and like, because I can tell that he's a talented actor.
Yeah.
How did you feel about in this show? Because I think it's interesting. How did you feel about that? Just the general concept of the show.
The concept is really relatable, right? So you have a millennial and present day, and I can see how, because, okay, so for me, I grew up in the church, and I've also grown up in the church with preachers' children. And so I can see that whole rebellious part, and I've seen it in real life. So it was really, that part was really relatable. And I also think, too, nowadays, I was just talking about this, too. Nowadays, I find that a lot of people are like, oh, I don't believe in anything. I'm an atheist. And okay, so what makes you an atheist? And having that whole conversation. So I think it's very relevant to today's day and age. And I also think with, especially what's going on here in America with the division and wherever you lean politically, all of it comes into play, right? So the traditional is if you are extreme right, then you're an evangelist and you're very religious, and if you're extreme left, then you're not. But the lines are all blurred now, so I think this show is very, very relevant. And I applaud CBS for tackling it. And I was going to say this. So CBS every so often tackles religion. They had Joan of Arcadia, and then recently canceled Living Biblically. And so now God Friended Me, which has a different target audience, which I'm interested in who you think their target audience is.
That's a really good question.
Because I've been reading up, and they think it's more of a procedural, the show, like a Law and Order, which gets a little bit of an older audience. They think that the topic is definitely for an older audience, but then you have young actors who are tackling the issues of today. So are you going to pull in that young audience?
That's a good question.
I'm not actually hopping in, guys. I haven't seen the show, so sorry, listeners, I can't comment on the show, but CBS in general is really aiming for middle America. They actually, of all the networks, do the best, which is interesting because I think if you look at the Emmys, I mean, none of the networks are doing well awards-wise, but typically like ABC and NBC will at least get some Emmy nominations, and Fox has all these kind of culty comedies that people love, and CBS gets accused of having sort of all the generic network shows like NCIS and Hawaii Five-0 and FBI. But I kind of get why. I think this is a good network for this show because I do think it would appeal to maybe more traditional religious group because it seems like it's kind of a pro-God message overall.
For sure.
So I think CBS makes sense.
That is a great. Oh, go ahead.
And for the show too, I don't think it's just pro-God. I think it's being a good person and how we're all interconnected somehow, even if we don't realize it, and just treating people kindly. Do you know what I mean? Like he's finding who he is in society, but you also see in the pilot how there's underlying reasons why he's quote unquote an atheist. Yeah. And dealing with that pain and all of that. So I think overall the show is just like a really, like we keep saying, a feel-good show and how we're all interconnected.
I think so too. I think a couple of things I see is, they're trying to exhibit people who have different beliefs and how they can coexist. But I would agree with the Middle America part because a lot of the shows we've watched that tackle controversial subjects, they present the situation. They don't tell you what's right or wrong.
Yep.
There is it feels like there's definitely a narrative in this. It's like he as an atheist is being challenged more so than the other people.
Yeah.
You know, which has pros and cons when you do that. But if you're targeting Middle America, who I don't have the numbers on this, but generally speaking, from what we believe, from a popular belief, most of them are probably conservative Christians.
Right.
And that's generally what you mean when you say Middle America. This makes sense for that.
It does. And you know what's great about it, too, is that you picture, the family sitting down because this is airing on Sunday, right after the 60-minute time slot. So you have, like, the church day, if this is your target audience. Football, and then dinner, and you sit down and you can watch the show with the entire family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, too, because even with the Middle America, it's a very diverse cast.
It is.
Intentionally diverse, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I wonder, that's interesting because if it's a show that's targeted in that way, I think about another show that was like super successful and targeted at Middle America was like Roseanne. That is a white, that cast is, and granted, that show started in the 90s, so it's a little different, or I think it started in the 90s, but it's interesting. If you're going for Middle America, you have a black male protagonist who's with who they're already budding like a love interest with the white woman. It's an interesting twist there,
and then his best friend is Indian.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So maybe they're testing boundaries too with that, which is cool.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. But there are a lot of things here in the show that they're doing well. However, I think the format of this show, and I think this is my critique of shows that come on network right now, it feels dated to me. And I wish I could put my finger on what about the format feels dated, but I guess maybe the voiceovers, it reminds me of, what was it, Sweet Bitter, which you liked. But for some reason, how we're introduced to the characters, it doesn't feel as organic. It feels a little bit more forced.
Okay, so I want you to think of this. Have you ever watched Law and Order?
Okay, yes.
Okay, so in Law and Order is that procedural, right?
We got drops today.
You know exactly what's going to happen. You know that there's going to be a crime.
Yeah.
You know that the two protagonists are going to try to solve the crime.
Yeah.
And then it's either going to be solved or it's not going to be solved. Now put this show in there. So it's the same format, which I understand why you're saying it feels dated because that show's been on for 20 years.
Yeah.
So, but it's the same format. But if you are, again, indeed targeting this Middle America, then and an older audience or a family or whatever, then you want that structure because that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great analysis.
I feel like this is the kind of show that your aunt would say we love that God Friended Me show. It's the kind of show where your relatives would say that, and then they would say the show we love that Hawaii 5-0, or we love that NCIS, we love that God Friended Me.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No,
It totally makes sense
Yeah.
because you think about the shows you just named. Such longevity. NCIS has been on for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Law and Order 20 years. All of these shows have longevity. So that package, however they've packaged it, works for that target audience.
So it sounds like you guys don't think this show will be very connected plots episode to episode. Is that what you guys, because Law and Order, when I think about the shows, there is a little underlying character development, but it's slow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you guys think, this is for you too, Jeff, do you guys think that we're not going to see, they introduced the dynamic with him and his father. That's something that they're going to slowly kind of drag along as opposed to answering though. And most of the plot will be about him helping out whoever God introduces him to.
Absolutely. That's absolutely what it is. The slow burn is his relationship and dealing with his own pain.
Yeah.
The fast burn is the situations that he's going to be placed in, which will be the same situations being the Good Samaritan that allows him to start to believe in God again, is my take on it.
And that's why so many network shows are procedurals, because then you can just dip in and dip out.
Yeah.
And it's designed for syndication. So if USA buys this show, they can just air one episode at a time. DeAnJilo, you were watching Counterpart.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of show your Aunt Linda could slip
No,
into
she can't
episode
slip in on
6.
that.
Yeah. So I think that's just, network loves procedural because it's good from an advertising perspective, because it's your Aunt Linda can slip in and then slip out if she wants. And yeah, that's why it might feel a little dated. It's just because I think network in general, when you compare it to the very long plot and narrative structuring of really good prestige TV,
Yeah.
it does feel a little dated.
And I wonder, like, because it's not like they're not in the know what's happening. Is there success with this? Like, because for me, and I'm not the target audience, but for me, I think that's why I'm not going to rewatch it. It's interesting, and I'm a spiritual guy. It's not interesting enough, I guess I would say. It's just like it's a very predictable formula, and what'll get me to come into a show is I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's challenging the way I think, and like it's entertaining, all of those things. And I don't think for me it has enough of that to make me be like, oh, I'm checking back in on this next week.
No, I understand absolutely what you're saying, but I do think that they do have a target audience, and I think that the show is probably going to be around for a little bit if it hits the mark. And the topic, I think the topic specifically is one that either people are going to want to address, or they're not going to want to address.
So we have a couple of other. We already talked about Brandon Michael Hall. But we have a couple other people that, were very prominent episode. I wanted to know if anyone else stood out to you. We had Valid Bean, who played Kara Bloom, who was the news reporter. Alan Finner, which is, Javisha Leslie, who played Alan Finer, who's the sister.
Yep.
We have the father, who we saw on Scandal, and his best friend, who was Indian or something in that. Suraj Sharma.
Sharma, yeah.
Who plays Rakesh. Did anyone else stand out to you? Did you enjoy the performance?
I mean, I'm always going to say Joe Morton because I love him from Scandal, right? And I just think he's such a powerhouse and a powerful actor.
He's got a presence about him, doesn't he?
About him that I'm just like, oh, I like this guy. I did think that the best friend, Rakesh, played that kind of like nerdy, finding myself, millennial, online dating, that whole thing really, really well. Because I related to that. I was like, oh yeah,
that was
I
real.
get it.
It was the line in there. I don't know why this stood out to me. It was like, we don't do Tinder anymore. We do Bumble. Like that little stuff like that.
No one does Tinder.
Yeah.
And if you guys saw Life of Pi, he was Pi.
Yes.
On the boat.
Yes.
Oh wow, look at that.
I read that.
So, before we get a little bit further in the show, I hope you guys are enjoying our content here on TV Pilot Reviews. We do a lot of stuff here, but AfterBuzz does a whole bunch of other content. Linda, would you like to let them know?
Guys, hey AfterBuzzers, our network produces after shows for nearly all of your favorite TV shows, from dramas, reality TV, sci-fi, and more. There is no network that works harder to serve television fans, but we need your help. We're asking that you please subscribe to one or more of our YouTube channels. By subscribing to our channel, YouTube will suggest content that's tailor-made for you, and you'll help AfterBuzz continue to grow. And if you're worried about those pesky notifications, don't be, because they're optional. So hit the subscribe button now for this channel, and check out our other AfterBuzz YouTube channels as well. Let us know you did so in the comments, and we'll thank you on air. For now, thanks for being the best fans and for helping us be the ESPN of TV Talk.
Yes.
And we are on Spotify now. So if you carry Spotify, which I know we all do, you can catch all of our shows on Spotify. We are on iTunes. So pop in one of the podcasts, listen to us on your drive to work, your drive home, your drive everywhere if you're in LA.
I love the Spotify. I love that we're on Spotify now. It's so convenient for me. I know I'll be checking that out. But shout out to Jeff for throwing on the I'm Different in the background. All right, look, I wish we had a hand clap drop, because I feel like you should be awarded for that. That was a nice touch.
Bravo.
Way to go. But anyway, guys.
It caught me off guard for a second.
I know.
I
I love that song though, and also Jeff really wanted to incorporate it in the show somehow, because it was very much incorporated throughout.
Oh,
this
you
episode.
know I made it happen.
Yeah, you did.
You know I wasn't gonna let that go.
That's great. I love that. What else can we touch on in the show? Do you have anything?
I thought that this part was interesting. So Berlanti Productions is who's producing the show. They produce The Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, that new show that you guys reviewed,
Oh yeah.
Blind Spot. So he has some hits. This production company has some hits.
Okay.
So to take this risk on this, if it's a risk,
Yeah.
either they really believe in it or they're taking a risk. Either way,
You consider this a risk? Oh, sorry.
I don't think it's a risk.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just saying, like, you've got some powerhouse shows, so someone here is making good decisions.
Yeah.
So you threw this one into the mix, so it must be a good show.
Yeah, for sure. It's not a flop. Like when I'm going to always bring up The Mayor. When we first watched The Mayor, it was so it was just irresponsible. And this is not irresponsible. It has some compelling aspects to it. Now that you guys introduced me to who the target audience is, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And it airs on Sunday. So Yeah, I like that, and he's got a great resume. So it seems like he's a guy who knows a little bit about what makes a good show a good show.
Now, what do you think about touching on the topic of faith, atheism, religion in this day and age, specifically for, our generation and just the climate that we're in right now?
Well, I like it. I feel like I like the concept. Me personally, for it to be interesting to me, I would have done it differently. I wouldn't have had this narrative built. One of the reasons I love the show, Sorry for Your Loss, which kind of touches on grief a lot. Mm-hmm. They introduce all of these aspects, but they're not telling anyone who's right or wrong.
Yep.
And I think that's more compelling to me when you bring out, as a Christian, if you bring out the good and bad of that, you bring out the good and bad of atheism, agnostic, which I feel like, or spiritual, which is what Cara Bloom represented. I would have done that, and that would have been a very compelling show to me. And like that sounds fascinating because that is also representative of what I feel like is going on in America.
I agree with you. I also do think that you have to, again, since we've talked about who the target audience is, you want to make it as simple as possible so that you get your point across as easy as possible.
For sure.
So I do think that this is a topic that might be hard for some people to address because I feel like, just like with politics, religion has always been something that you either like, oh, I'm not going to talk about that, or, ooh,
Yeah.
And even on the show, they touched upon it like, oh, you're either religious, and she's like, no, I'm spiritual, and then that whole conversation. But I do find it interesting, his perspective. He calls himself the atheist prophet, which is like, oxymoron to me, but the filter of being an atheist millennial with a podcast, and where that's going to take him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so too. And I'm just thinking about some of the lines that just could have been a little bit more powerful. Even Cara Bloom, I remember her and his sister and her were talking, and him, Miles Feiner. They were talking and they were discussing. She was discussing why she thought there was a God exists. Mm-hmm. She was like, I feel like it would suck if there was no greater plan to what we were doing.
Right.
It was just kind of like, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, dig deeper there. For DeAnJilo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I agree with you. I agree with you, but I get what they're doing.
Yeah.
I get the very basic, let's keep it simple.
They are keeping it very simple.
So that if it's you and your little 8-year-old sister and your 10-year-old nephew, you're all going to get that point, right?
There are no atheists who's going to watch this show. But that's not who they're going for.
I don't know.
They're being attacked in this show.
I don't know if that's going to be necessarily true, because here's why. I think that someone that is an atheist is going to watch this show to critique it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think necessarily that they're going to feel attacked. I think that perhaps if they're open-minded, they're going to see things a different way, not meaning that their way is the wrong way. Just like there are so many different ways to look at things and everyone has their own belief system, that this is just one other way to have the conversation.
I think it's a compelling question. Actually, I want to pass that out to you guys. You can comment on YouTube, or hit us up on Twitter, which will give you our information for that. If you think this is actually something that atheists would check out, because I don't think so. Linda thinks, I don't know, she's a little more optimistic than me. So
I think so, just because, you could be atheist, but you're still open-minded, right? So you're open-minded, and God friended you on social media, which is a whole other conversation. But
so before we get out of here, I want to hit you with a question. I'll answer it first. Do you have a scene that you enjoyed the most? I know sometimes on one of the shows we do, we call it the most moving moment. Just one of the scenes that you thought was just it stood out to you.
Spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, we haven't spoiled anything. We've done a good job so far, but now we're definitely spoiling, guys. My answer while you think about yours, I actually got emotional. It was when the doctor came out of the taxi, and he would, and I don't know, everything started to connect, and I was just like, it got me because life is tough or whatever. But I think that kind of sums up my belief when it comes to faith. Is just accepting and hoping and understanding that everything that happens has a purpose behind it and has a reason behind it. And I'm just, I don't know, it must be the state in life I'm in that hit me. When he came out,
that was a great
and
moment.
I was just like, oh. I was like, I'm getting soft, man. I am getting soft because that got me. Do you have a moving moment?
That was a great moment.
Jeff is on fire.
I think that the moment that got me was when Kara Violet finally confronted her own fear and sat beside her mom and actually talked. And then, but she didn't introduce herself. She was just small.
Yeah, it was cute. Yeah.
Small talk. And then in my mind, I was thinking, I don't have children, but like, I know how moms are. They know their children. Their children could be 80 and they still know their children. And I get that they were apart, but I was wondering in the back of my mind, is she going to realize that that's her kid?
Yeah.
And when she did, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. She did I love when actors and actresses can tell a story without saying anything and like how she changed her face. That was pretty good. I like that. Like she was just like, you know, and that was organic. I felt like I was there.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So that was probably my favorite moment.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think that's it for us.
Are we rating?
Oh, yeah. Before we get out of here, that's what we keep Linda around for. She keeps us on top of our stuff. Linda, do you have a rating for this?
So this is interesting because you know how we do 1 to 5 for our ratings, and you know Jeff always throws me off with his random
his numbers.
ratings.
Jeff,
but he hasn't watched it, so he can't rate it. So,
10 minutes. Rate the 10 minutes you saw.
I'd give it a 6 out of 5.
What you got, Linda?
Okay, so I think it's a solid pilot.
Okay.
And so I'm putting a few parameters on my number. It's a solid pilot, but it follows a basic formula that I think is not a new formula. I think you plug in the plot, you plug in the actors, boom, you've got your series. Yep. So that being said, I'm going to give it a 2.5. And not because I think it's a terrible pilot, but because I think it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. Like I don't think they had to do a lot to make it.
Yeah, I get that. That's a good point. I think that's interesting because procedurals are, some people love that stuff.
Don't get me wrong. I love Law and Order.
Yeah.
I can do a Law and Order marathon all day.
I agree, and but I'm probably going to go a little higher. But I'm not checking. I know I'm not going to ever watch the show again. But I'll give it a 3 because I appreciate the subject matter, and I'm very happy that Brandon Michael Hall has done something different. Yeah, as an actor. So that's my rating. Jeff gave it a 6 out of 5. Yeah. So, all right, guys, I think we're out of here.
Yes.
But before we get out of here, once again, thank you for tuning in. You can check us out on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and now Spotify, which we're really excited about. You guys can hit us with any questions you have on the YouTube comments, and you can hit us up on Twitter. And if you're wondering where you can find me on Twitter, I'm DeAnJilo. You can hit me up on at DeAnJilo TV on Twitter. Make sure you check the spelling. It's DeAnJilo. And also on Instagram at DeAnJilo. Linda, where can they find you?
Guys, Linda Antwi here. You can find me all across social media at Linda Is So Girly. Bye for now.
Bye, guys. Deuces.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.